Hey everybody, it's Molly. I'm out in my garage with my seedlings, giving everything a checkup, and I just wanted to talk for a quick second about why I prefer plastic pots, plastic nursery pots, over peat pots to start my seeds. I don't love planting in peat pots. I used peat pots this year to plant, but I also used nursery pots. So I've got my 3-inch nursery pots, and my nursery pots have little onion sprouts starting in them. But I also used peat pots to start plants. So here's an example of a peat pot. So a peat pot is a little disposable pot. You're supposed to be able to plant these right in the ground. I've had varying success with peat pots in terms of them breaking down and the plant being able to function in the ground when they're in a peat pot. Peat is not the most sustainable source. Using peat pots in my planting setup is not ideal because it's just not very sustainable. Now, they do make pots that are made out of cocoa coir, and those are a little bit better. However, I find that with peat pots, they are a little bit harder to water. So let me show you my watering setup and how I water my plants, and then talk about why I don't love peat pots as an option for bottom watering seedlings. You can see that the peat pot does a pretty good job of soaking up the water. But as the peat pot starts to break down from underneath, it gets harder and harder for water to wick up the peat pot and keep the soil evenly moist. And for germination, even moisture is really super important. So I planted in peat pots this year just because I ran out of nursery pots, and it's been pretty difficult to find nursery pots without ordering them online. Peat pots are a little expensive because you only buy them and use them once, versus a nursery pot made out of plastic. I can use these nursery pots again after I take my plants out. And my plants seem to do better in the nursery pot. So you can see that my Brussels sprouts are up, and I've got lots of broccoli up. I even have lots of peas that are up. So I find that watering is much easier in a plastic nursery pot that has holes in the bottom versus a peat pot, which doesn't have holes in the bottom, but is this papery substance. So because it's just a one-time use, I don't ever recommend that people only use peat pots because it's just more expense for you. Now, the one caveat I will say to that is I do like to use peat pots to start things that are sensitive to their roots being disturbed. So things like squashes and eggplants, when you take those out of their pots, they really don't like to have disturbed roots. And so when I use a peat pot, it's easier to just pop that pot in the ground. Sometimes I'll rip up the bottom of the pot just so that the roots don't have a hard time getting to the soil. But for those plants, using a peat pot instead of a plastic pot is usually better because you're just not roughing up their roots as much. If you are going to purchase nursery pots, I highly recommend investing in a high quality plastic nursery pot, something like from the Bootstrap Gardener, something thick that will last you a few seasons instead of a thinner pot, the ones that you get when you pick up plants at places like Lowe's, because those are so thin and papery, they're easy to crack and split, and sometimes those are not going to last you as long. If you love gardening content, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. As always, thank you so much for watching my video. I'm happy to be here. I'll see you next time. Get out and grow something.